Hey, this is Pamela Schneider. I'm the retail editor for Blue Book Services, and this is the Produce Reporter Week in Review. Greg, I've had a busy week. It's been a busy
You
week.
have. You were on a PMA webinar, a town hall that went extremely well. I think the write-up was just as good, personally.
Well, I actually pulled my vintage Apple brands and put those out there to talk about branding, kind of setting the stage for uh, what can be an uncomfortable conversation in the produce world. And we delved into a lot of issues that I know a lot of grower shippers are having, marketers are having with retail brands and the rise of private branding in retail. Of course, I mean, private label produce isn't new, not at all, but the trend I think that we're seeing in a lot of premium retailers, especially, is private branding that isn't based on getting a better deal. And that's changing changing the ingredients and changing the economics of the whole deal. It was a really lively and fascinating discussion. What stuck out to you? I was talking, so I wasn't paying attention.
Well, one of the things that I think was brought up that was interesting that we had covered earlier in the week when you talked with Anne Marie is the impact of food inflation, and it is affecting the produce department in addition to meat more than anywhere else in the grocery store right now. And I think it was good to talk about how that's going to affect promotions at the retail level, because if we have food inflation, then there's going to be less of an urgency to promote on price and less of an economic value to it. So if you're not going to promote on price, what are you going to promote on? You're going to promote on quality. And a lot of times that will bring in brands. So there are a lot of good produce brands that are becoming more well known due to the marketing and social influencers that produce companies are investing. And a lot of retailers, you pointed out one retailer that's my neighborhood retailer, and that's Hy-Vee, and they go out of their way to promote produce brands. They do not do their own brands in the grocery store, except for maybe some of the fresh cut stuff. But they heavily promote produce brands, and you showed some photos. It's very clear throughout their department that they're relying on the quality and brand promise from produce brands to do their branding in that department. And that's kind of a departure from some other retailers that are investing more in their own brands.
Yeah, I pulled, so I did a little hometown store check just to show some of the brands that how the retailers in my neck of the woods are approaching branding. And I have Randall's, which is Safeway, Albertsons, and HEB and Sprouts. Those are the three that I went to. We obviously have a whole lot more here. But Randall's has its own private brands for the organics, the O organics and things like that. But they also had a branded promotion for Prima peaches, which is what we Wona packing. I never can say that right. But
These are hard.
yeah, but I think it highlighted some of the things that we're seeing. And then HEB has been putting a ton of effort and resources into its private brand. And I think the differentiation between private label and private brand, I think, is really important, because branding, as you mentioned earlier, has a brand promise. And what is your brand promise bringing to you? And a retailer like HEB, in its branded produce in the produce department, is not talking about being the cheapest. Their brand is called premium. Their brand is called heirloom navels. I eat a lot of those heirloom navels. They're fantastic. And it's not where I'm going to find 87 cents a pound grapes. So they have the HEB brand. And then when it's something unique, a unique characteristic, like they promote Hood River peaches, for example, Hood River cherries, for example, when those are in season. And then they are promoting those funky grapes from the grapery. That's the difference that I'm seeing. But then, when we throw inflation into that and higher prices into that, it's kind of opening the door for another story that we had over the past 7 days, and that's Dollar General. And you mentioned Aldi. Discounters are putting a lot of resources into produce as well. And so as our mainstream retailers like an H-E-B, a Publix, a Wegmans, is promoting brand, the discounters look like they're going to scoop in and go for price.
Yeah, Danelle Macchialmi on the webinar mentioned the danger of a race to the bottom. I think there is a big danger on racing to the bottom on price across retail, but if you are a retail brand like Aldi or Dollar General, their whole message is on value. And so for them to compete with a race to the bottom, I don't think that's necessarily bad for the industry. I mean, I've been very open about shopping at Aldi, not all the time, but I go there probably once a week for my family because they have very good quality produce at very reasonable prices. And I go there with that expectation. And there are lots of brands I recognize. There are even premium brands that get there all the time. For instance, I'm not sure how they're doing this, but those little lettuce heads from Tanamir and Antle have been showing up at my Aldi, and it's way above the price range of a lot of things at Aldi, but I buy them almost every time because I know it's good quality. And I think a lot of value shoppers will still buy premium stuff at those places. And that's something that I don't think Dollar General is going to try to compete on. Would you be surprised if they did that?
I think I would be surprised to see a branded produce promotion at Dollar General. I think Dollar General is going to focus on, the 50 SKUs that people need the most, especially in food deserts and rural areas. But the news from Dollar General, though, I think is we're going to see a quick ramp up of produce. Right now, they've got produce in 1,500 stores. They're planning on adding it to another 500 by the end of the year. And they just wrapped up their DG Fresh initiative, which is not produce related, but it was the self-distribution of refrigerated and frozen. And they had mentioned previously a couple of times that is laying the path toward self-distribution of fresh produce. And that is what's going to enable them to really ramp up their produce presence. They have 17,500 stores. For those of you who don't know that, who haven't seen them on every other street corner out there and every other gravel road corner in rural America. But to see them go towards self-distribution, I think is going to drastically increase the pace of the fresh produce distributions there. But for Dollar General, I think they're still going to go for value for bagged apples, bagged potatoes. What's the quickest and easiest and lowest maintenance produce that they can get into stores? Although, I mean, I've been to one of the Dollar Generals, a DGX in Nashville, that had some premium things. But I think that's probably just throwing spaghetti at the wall to see what sticks. For in general, I think we're going to see, plot potatoes, lettuce, onions, tomatoes, apples, pretty tough stuff that's easy to maintain.
Well, it's expanding the availability to fresh produce in areas that have hard time getting access to that. And that is absolutely a good thing for both the produce industry and for consumers in general to be able to get that a little bit more easily. I mean, we know the lower income consumers say they have a hard time finding and affording fresh produce. And this is a way to get at that problem. And I think that's a great thing.
I think that's it for this week's Produce Reporter Week in Review. If you are not getting the Produce Reporter, go to producebluebook.com and sign up.